Okay, so it seems like you're thinking about a career as a logistics engineer. Good for you for really digging into this. We're diving deep into those RoleCatcher.com guides you passed along, and wow, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it's a field that's just booming right now. Think about it. Global supply chains, everybody buying online, everything has to move faster, smarter. Logistics engineers, they're the brains making it all work.
And it's not like you're just tracking dots on a map, right?
Yeah.
The guide mentions needing a mix of analytical skills, sure, but also, and this stood out to me, really strong people skills. What's the deal with that in a field that seems, I don't know, kind of technical?
Because a logistics engineer, you're not working alone, right? You're the connection between suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, and then the customer who's getting that product. You need those sharp analytical skills to make those crazy complex systems work, but you got to communicate that vision too, and to all different kinds of teams, all different stakeholders.
That's actually really interesting. It's almost like being a conductor, making sure every instrument is in sync for that final performance. Speaking of different parts, the RoleCatcher guide, it maps out the different career stages. You start as a logistics assistant, and then you can climb that ladder all the way up to, you guessed it, logistics engineer. What were your takeaways from how they broke that down?
The thing is, there is such a range of tasks, and how they change as you get more experience is fascinating. You might start by helping out with the basic stuff, transportation, inventory management, really hands-on, but then you're analyzing data, seeing where the bottlenecks are, and eventually you become the one designing these really smart, efficient systems.
So no being stuck at a desk all day then.
No way. It's a really dynamic field that can take you in all sorts of directions. You could be at a computer looking at logistics software one day, then the next you're on site at a warehouse working with teams to make their processes better.
Now that's got to be exciting, especially for somebody who likes to see how their work makes a real difference.
Exactly. And as you move up, those leadership and strategic planning skills get more and more important. You're not just putting out fires, you're figuring out how to prevent them in the first place.
Talk about thinking ahead. Now, the guide really stresses continuous learning, too. They highlight certifications like CSCP and CPIM. Can you break those down? Some people listening might not know what those are.
Totally. Think of them as the gold standard for the industry. CSCP stands for Certified Supply Chain Professional. It shows you've got a deep understanding of global supply chain management, the whole picture. CPIM, that's Certified in Production and Inventory Management, so more focused on making those internal operations as smooth as possible. Having these on your resume, it says, I'm serious about this. Instantly boosts your credibility.
It's a way of signaling to employers, I'm not messing around, this is the career path for me. And speaking of showing you're qualified, they recommend some specific degrees, too. Engineering, supply chain management, those made sense. But then they said something interesting, customer service and administration. That kind of surprised me.
And there's that people element again. Don't forget, you're the communication hub in this web.
Yeah.
Being able to explain really complex stuff clearly, managing expectations, handling all the different personalities, it's just as important as the technical stuff. A logistics engineer who can't communicate, it's like a ship with no rudder.
Ouch. Yeah, I could picture that.
Yeah.
So it's a challenging field, but it seems like the rewards match that. Although I did notice they didn't sugarcoat it. Long hours, high stress, you might have to travel a lot. Not exactly a walk in the park, huh?
True, it's not always going to be glamorous. Logistics is all about solving problems, and they pop up all the time. You have to deal with unexpected delays, figure out international regulations, and then there are always those supply chain hiccups. But that's part of what makes it exciting, too. Every day is something new, a new challenge to solve, a new way to innovate.
It's like you're some kind of logistical detective, always piecing together clues to find those solutions and keep things running on time.
That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to another important point the guide makes. Technology. This isn't like the old days, forget your grandpa's shipping yard. We're talking about using AI to optimize routes, using predictive analytics, even tracking individual packages in real time.
It's mind-blowing how much tech is changing how things work in this field. Can you give an example of how AI is actually used in like a real-life logistics situation?
Okay, so say you're a logistics engineer for a company that ships stuff all over the world. You've got thousands of containers that have to go from point A to point B, and you have to make it as efficient as possible. So think about weather, traffic, even how much fuel costs. AI can look at tons of data all at once in real time and then predict potential problems. It can even tell you the best routes for your whole fleet that are the cheapest and fastest.
So it's like having a superpowered assistant who can make sense of all that information instantly. It'd take a whole team of people, I don't know, days or weeks to do what AI can do in a flash.
Exactly. And it's only getting smarter and more advanced all the time. As a logistics engineer, you have to be comfortable adapting to all this new tech, learning how to use it to your advantage.
It's a career where you really have to be ready to learn and keep up with changes, which honestly sounds like it keeps things interesting. But before you're out there designing those global supply chains, there's one thing everyone has to face: the job interview. Luckily, RoleCatcher, they've got a ton of interview prep stuff.
They really do. Over 120,000 practice questions. It can be a little overwhelming, honestly, but it shows how important they think this part of the job search is. They even give you some examples of common questions. Things like, why did you choose logistics engineering? Or what do you think are the most important qualities for this job?
Those sound like pretty typical questions. I bet the key is to go beyond the usual answers and show you really get what this field is all about.
You're exactly right. You want to let your passion for logistics come through, show off your problem-solving skills and those communication skills we talked about. Don't just list off your skills. Think of specific examples from your own experience to back it up and show how you've handled logistical challenges in the past.
So instead of saying something like, I'm a great communicator,
Yeah.
you could talk about a time you had to explain a really complex logistics issue to someone who didn't understand all the technical stuff, or maybe a time you helped two teams working on the same project get along and stop disagreeing.
Exactly. When you use real-life examples, it makes your skills come alive and shows you can actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And this is where everything we've been talking about comes together. When you understand the job, the trends, and the technology, you can answer those questions in a way that makes you stand out.
It's like you're getting a sneak peek at the test. You've looked behind the curtain and could talk about what it takes to succeed in this field.
You got it. And even though you need the technical know-how, don't downplay how important it is to show you're actually excited about this stuff. Logistics is about people just as much as processes, and companies want to see that you're actually pumped to tackle those challenges.
Yeah, that enthusiasm, it can make all the difference in an interview. But even if you ace the interview, knowing all this about logistics, it's got to be useful for those first few months at a new job.
For sure. It means you'll be able to jump right in, ask smart questions, and really contribute from day one. You won't just be learning the basics, you'll be able to work with your team and offer valuable ideas.
It's like you were saying before, it's not just about getting a package delivered. It's about understanding how global commerce works, seeing those challenges before they happen, and then finding those creative ways to keep things moving smoothly.
Absolutely. And speaking of keeping things moving, that reminds me of something else RoleCatcher talks about: networking. Going to industry events, meeting people online, even just reaching out to someone you admire for a quick chat. All that can be so valuable.
It's amazing how many opportunities pop up when you put yourself out there and make those connections.
Totally. You might hear about jobs you'd never find on the job boards, get a feel for different companies, maybe even find a mentor who can show you the ropes.
Like having a secret map to success in the logistics world. But networking in this field, it must be more than just showing up and shaking hands, right? Are there any specific things aspiring logistics engineers should be doing?
That's a great question. I always tell people to check out professional organizations like the Council of Logistics Management or the Institute for Supply Management. They have great networking events, conferences, resources to keep you up to date on the industry. It's all right there.
Those sound like amazing resources for anyone who's serious about logistics as a career. And I bet those online communities you mentioned can be great too.
They are. Platforms like LinkedIn are perfect for joining industry groups, getting into those discussions, even sharing what you know. It's a way to show you're passionate about logistics and meet people at the same time.
So if we're putting a pin in it, becoming a logistics engineer, it takes more than just technical skills, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be a lifelong learner, work on those communication and people skills, and really put yourself out there to build a network.
You nailed it. And those RoleCatcher guides you sent, they're the perfect place to start. They give you the whole picture, the skills you need, and the steps to take to build a really fulfilling career in a field that's always changing and growing.
This has been a really fascinating look at the world of logistics. Hopefully everyone listening is feeling inspired and ready to take that next step. Who knows, maybe someday you'll be the expert, helping someone else figure out their own path in logistics.
Now that would be something. And if you'll excuse me, I've got a supply chain optimization puzzle on my desk that needs solving.
Get to it. And for our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of logistics engineering. Until next time.